Okay, good episodes this week. Bit of an update on my, watch, write, edit, make a review stuff. My roommate and I are currently midway into Kabuto. Last episode I watched as of recording this was episode 39, aka the introduction of Dark Kabuto. Oh my, do I have thoughts. But though that will not be showing up for several months yet, as it's effectively the last thing I have in the queue for the year, so yeah, I'm almost done with writing prep for all of that. Next, I actually get down to editing stuff, but, for you people, waiting for me to actually publish new content, well, you're getting a surprise April Fool episode that I teased last week as well, and it'll be going public on Sunday, so look out for that. Anyways, stuff I should actually be talking about. Lupinranger vs. Patranger did something it really needed to do this week. And y'all know how I've been discussing Umika as thus far the worst character in the show. Well, that's not exactly the case anymore, as they did exactly what they needed to do with her, and give her a episode which more fleshed out her character. I've had issues with her, as she pretty much seems like the incompetent one of the Lupinranger team thus far, and what a better way to fix that than have an episode that requires her to save her comrades from the monster's special powers, and that is exactly what they did. And while also fleshing out her personal character. Umika's best friend is basically someone she's been holding as a crutch for the longest time. Her best friend that was frozen by one of the Gangler we haven't exactly gotten much on yet. Zamigo Delma was the one who did that. But during the episode's events, they flash back to her childhood, where she was pretty much picked on for being, or at least seeming, unusual, or out of fashion, or out of just place. So, and when you look out, what's the phrase? When you're an outlier on that, you tend to be picked on. That's pretty much universal. Then Umika's, the girl who would become Umika's best friend came into the picture and stood up for her, and basically they were best friends ever since. The additional backstory being that when she was a talented artist as a kid and kept developing that talent throughout their experiences, with Umika encouraging her in turn, so she was actually ending up getting she had just gotten her first publication in a digest manga in Japan, which is a bit of a mythology gag as well, as the digest magazine, it is the exact same one that in Kyoryuger that Love Touched was published in. We're not even kidding. Yeah, the mythology gags are running pretty deep this time. Because, you know, it's definitely a blink and you miss a detail. Whereas, admittedly, I don't think they're going to do anything more with it than make that manga a one-off reference, as unlike in Kyoryuger, where Love Touch was actually a ongoing story point, but a subtle on the down low one, because it was tied together through several aspects of the show between Ami's reading of it, Lucky's reading of it, Torian's reading of it, and then its eventual writer becoming one of the Kyoryuger. Yeah, I don't think Lupinranger is going to end up doing that. It's just a fun mythology gag to notice by, and good work on Junko Komura on not only remembering it, but using it as an expansionary setting detail. Like, you know, common points between Sentai series is what helps give a better scope to everything and whatnot. But yeah, right after Umika's friend got published, that's when she got frozen, and basically for everything that Umika's friend did to her, I am completely blanking on her name. I do not remember it at all. It is not in the wiki yet, so, yeah. Basically, she wanted to return the favor by saving her life because she meant that much to her, and basically her entire future was stolen by Zamigo in that moment, and, you know, that's why she's enduring through this, even though she herself admits to herself that she's not good at this. And that was one of the things we needed. We needed the acknowledgement that the reason she's struggling throughout all this, the reason she can seem kind of whiny, is she needs the support, she's used to the sport, and she's just only now learning how to stand on her own, which informs and, while not fully mediating, explains pretty much everything I found irritating about her and mediates it. You have no idea how much of a problem that has been with Super Sentai series for, not even just in the post-Gokaiger years, but continuously through it, where they have failed to remedy or explain the character flaws at just having them as an origin point, or seeing them work through them. Many series do. I, obviously, from my Kyoryuger reviews, have shown that many of the story point detractions were basically things people made up. Yes. And this is calling it out, acknowledging it, and working to subvert it in showing what she is strong at, and how she can, like, get the assistance she needs, even though it's ultimately by the way of how is she using her own skills to supplement others in the teamwork relationship, and how she can find to be strong on her own. She's not quite strong enough to be strong on her own, but she can, I shouldn't say trick the Patranger, but she can get them to work with her for the goal she is seeking out. Now, the reason she was left on her own is the Monster of the Week was, well, literally eating people. Using a pocket dimension, a pocket dimension Lupin collection piece, which, spoilers, was just a repainted toy version of the lamp from Patranger, the lamp wielded by the Magi Shine. Yes, Magi Shine. And I'm forgetting, Smokey, that was it. Smokey the Genie lived inside that lamp, and basically they used the toy version of that for this one instead of just a remolding or just a little prop that looks like a previous Sentai artifact. So, yeah, that one was a bit more obvious. I think I might be misremembering details, but I don't think they even remember to remove the Patranger crest on it. I'm probably misremembering it and seeing that there, but it's just me transposing, like, the memory of that item versus its repaint. I think it's there. It might not be. I might be misremembering that. I completely admit that. But, you know, it's kind of obvious this time. Plus, how does a lamp... Okay, I see how the lamp would relate. He's taking everything that's much larger than himself into it, so it's big, powerful genie, itty-bitty living space, to paraphrase the quote from Disney's Aladdin. I miss Robin Williams. So yeah, once everything is sucked in there, it's... The, expanded space is actually the guy's stomach. So, yeah, the previous victims of this specific monster, they are dead. They're in no way disguising that they were killed by being digested by the guy. In fact, the only reason the victims this time don't meet the same grisly fate is when Kairi and Tuma are also pulled into it, they have enough sense to, alongside the victims of another restaurant that the monster had eaten, because its modus operandi is eating the patrons of a restaurant and not the food of a restaurant. Well, the second one they went to for this, they managed to gather up everybody on top of tables that the monster had also ended up eating when everybody was sucked in, and thus survived the gastric juices of the monster long enough to survive until Umika and the Patranger came to their rescue. It's like, I like this in that it has to... It's not demeaning or not discouraging. It's not showing Kairi and Tuma as incompetent, even though they got stuck in this pocket dimension trap situation. They're using their own resourcefulness to keep other people trapped in there alive, while you know, just waiting out for rescue, because that's pretty much the only thing you can do at it. In early to mid-90s shows where they kept using the pocket dimension thing, it was almost always to the point of complete helplessness no matter the situation. And while they were, I'll admit, unable to do anything to get themselves out of there, they were still being proactive in lasting through until they could be saved. Whereas, yeah, a lot of the shows that ended up doing the similar tangent in older material, I don't exactly remember which one did the gastric juices stuck in its stomach for digestion, but I'm betting that was either Dai or Kaku Ranger. I need to rewatch those shows. And yeah, they pretty much did the whole helpless thing there. Helpless and unable to do anything versus helpless but enduring through their own intelligence to keep everybody safe. Yeah. Now, the way the Patranger are added into this plot, I should say, is Sakya is crushing heavily on Umika. This has been foreshadowed for a few episodes, and he's actually something of a, I don't want to say culinary person, but he enjoys good food and is familiar with the, like, dining locations of the area, so is personally angered that the monster of the week had been, like, devouring the patrons of them, as he'd been wanting to go to some of those places and try them out alongside Umika because they wanted to date. Umika, of course, takes advantage of this crush he has on her to get the Patranger in a location where they would be able to fight the monster. How Umika knows that the monster is going to strike there next is basically she saw from a magazine that the monster had been leafing through that he had basically been going in order from location to location and the same way in the book. So she flipped to simply the next one in the next page, and that basically waited out there for the monster to attack, without the Patranger being any bit the wiser about it. Saki, of course, has the personal investment in that he likes the food of these kinds of places, so is personally offended by the monster attacks, and, you know, continuing the relationship development between the teams in that there's both antagonism between the Reds, but the other members of the team seem to more get along with each other. Tsukasa's at least wanting to give them the benefit of the doubt, and if they don't actually commit actual crimes, there's no reason to really chase them down. And, you know, we already know that Keiichiro's the absolute justice dude that needs to take a chill pill, so there's that. Otherwise, the Patranger did have a pretty good showing this time, all things around, with them getting to be the big damn heroes who rescued both the Lupinranger and got the giant monster ball to show off their new arm attachments. And to be fair, with the new VS machines, they are using them quite intelligently as both interim battle utilities to give each team special weapon attacks just to combine their powers and whatnot, and also grander scale brawls. A problem with the secondary vehicle arm equipment mechs in some Sentai is the items are completely useless to, like, the small-scale brawls. You can pretty much put them in things to activate lights and sounds in the toys, but yeah, not much else as a utility there. Kyoryuger was one of the few that kind of mixed and matched it a bit, in that they gave special attacks to all the beast batteries on the ground, and then it was a crapshoot on whether they got featured on the grand scale. Here, they're doing a bit more balanced than that, and seeing spotlight on both ground and air, and that's a good way to go about it to me, because, well, you've got these things that look good as weapons either way, so get them going. In specific, this week they used the Cyclone Dial Fighter for a new Lupinranger team attack, and the Patranger got to use their giant motorcycle as a yo-yo. Now, as was pointed out on Twitter to me, the yo-yo thing is amusing, as that's commonly used as a weapon by basically schoolyard gangsters, or Yankees as they're referred to, is if you've ever been hit in the face by a yo-yo, it hurts. It hurts a lot, because those things can be pretty dense, and plus the spinning motion to it, you get the centrifugal force going against you, and yeah, I've conked my head quite a few times trying to figure out how to do stuff with a yo-yo. It's not pleasant. It's like, I think I broke a pair of glasses when I was trying to figure out how to use one in, like, 3rd or 4th grade, so I know exactly where they're coming from with that. Plus, the whole tie them up thing goes well with their, you know, arresting subplots. So, yeah, good showing from the Lupinranger and Patranger this time in mediating character issues, having some decent choreography, pretty decent storyline for everything this time around, and pretty bad connotations that are acknowledged, but yeah, in the censored way that you can't really get away with it in early morning television, regardless of what you're trying to do with it. So, yeah, good one all around. Build, however, it's not a bad episode. It's not. It's just the proxy fight episodes always feel like there's a lot of stuff leading to little. Like, that's pretty much my determination from this being like the 4th or 5th one of those that they've made now. And at least this should be the last of them, because, well, proxy fight is over, Toto won, to no surprise. Actually, it's a bit more focused on resolving the whole Sawa is a traitor subplot, in her revealing that her relation to everyone, yeah, she's not actually a traitor for Namb anymore, and hasn't been since everybody showed how much she cared about, how everyone showed how much they cared about her, and she basically broke her Namb programming on her own a while ago, basically because, well, the whole Smash stuff. When Namba turned Toto on her and outed her as a spy, and they had to go save her because they wanted her, that's when she decided to defect and support Sento and Company. The recent betrayal of handing over the Rabbit form data and the Full Bottle Buster data was basically to save a family that earlier in the show, Ryuga and Sento had worked to smuggle out of, I think it was either Hokuto or Toto to Seito, because they were aware of that due to Sawa's prior surveillance, and they were being held hostage so that if Sawa didn't turn over the data, they would just be murdered, which is a better reason for the whole betrayal subplot, especially since, well, Sento gave them the data for her betrayal anyways, because Sento knew that Rabbit form would not be able to completely dominate Gentoku and his new Kamen Rider Rogue powers anyways if he used any of the full bottles potentially in their possession, which is what the first half of the episode is actually showing, in how Gentoku uses the Diamond full bottle to basically redirect and dismiss and block completely and utterly all of Rabbit's abilities. Now, there is of course a downside to this, in that immediately, and I mean immediately after the form debuts, it is rendered completely and utterly worthless. It is a super form. It is one of a tandem pair of super forms for this rider, which are supposed to at least get a few episodes before you have that happen to them. And yet it's being done here immediately, not even minutes after it first shows up on screen. I mean, Sento is shown to be fighting in it for quite a while, and it shows the resilience of that form and be able to survive dominating attacks or having its attacks all prove to be ineffective, so it's not completely weak, but it still undermines the showcasing of that form and the appeal to it, because, in my opinion, Rabbit is the better looking of the two hazard form armors, as I keep referring to them as. So, what's going to be the appeal for the form being used if you already know intellectually that it can get its ass handed to it by a form that basically was so also already shown to be superior to hazard form as it is. Yeah, that part of the episode I did not like at all. It was at least intelligently used in how Gentoku used a prior full ball ability that made Sento so effective to do it, but still, it's like, you're failing form advertisement. But once Sawa gets, is informed that, Kazumi has saved the family, because he went off to do that after his battle ended, then, he reveals Tank form as an armada of little tanks. You know, that just amused the crap out of me, because you don't... Well, I'm still wondering where the hell this support armor is coming from in the grand scheme of things, as it really is appearing out of nowhere, and Build's rider forms have had a consistent means by which to create their armor by building it up around them. I gotta admit, the picture of the little armada of tanks that docks onto hazard form is just ridiculously hilarious and awesome. Especially since he eventually goes into a little gun tank form of his own, where his shoulder cannons reorient themselves into a artillery position, and his tank treads just form a little carrier body that just... It's the gun tank from Mobile Suit Gundam. Hell, it's the Zaku gunner, or the Zaku tank from Mobile Suit Gundam. Either one is applicable for this situation, and the appearances of how Sento is riding around in that form. And of course, with all this artillery work and the higher strength and the force behind tank form, yeah, Gentoku is crushed completely and utterly. And hey, I like that they had a good build-up to the form debut and having a reason behind it, and explaining all the traitor intrigue plots away in a way that does not further damage the character. You made her a suspect, you revealed her as the culprit as you thought you did, but there was more to the whole situation than you thought you did, so it's even more complex, insidious, nuanced, and doesn't show anyone as stupid, as Sento had basically figured out earlier, and just was playing both sides simply to not only drag out his own motivations in disproving them, but really reaffirming that this is a character we should be able to trust in. Which, hey, that was what we thought about the Sawa plot. That's what we thought about the Sawa is a traitor again plot anyways, in that she'd already proven herself and her trustworthiness, that her being the actual culprit again just wasn't good. This is instead doing that, but adding additional story details that justifies it simply because of the strained relationship she has with her former masters that, yeah, it is so totally in character with Namba Heavy Industries to end up doing this just to get more information from a previously thought of worthless human, because they think everything that doesn't have a value to it should be discarded and destroyed. At least that's what I keep getting from the Namba head guy, whose name I'm forgetting. Juzabura Namba. Yeah. He is shaping up to be, at the very least, the secondary antagonist after Soichiro Isurugi, as, yeah, the dude was the shadow puppeteer master of Sato's entire invasion plot, gave them everything, and when Sato's prime minister actually looked to hold up his end of the bargain of the whole proxy fight, in that agreed upon conditions of back out of Hokuto, return the bottles, return the Pandora's box, so it's in no single individual's possession. Yeah, Namba just chooses to kill Sato's prime minister and use Isurugi's abilities to change people's appearances to kill the prime minister and then replace him with Namba's prime minister. Namba himself, yeah. So yeah, old guy is gone. Sato's prime minister has been doubled like Sento was, and no one is the wiser aside from Isurugi and the Namba Industries insiders. I still think Isurugi is going to be the final villain of the series, though, simply because of what's been happening with Misora. Now, this is completely, fan theory territory, but we all know by now that Misora is possessed by an individual from Mars. Like, that is actually in the preview information for the next episode. So, people have also proposed the idea that Isurugi is one of those villains that becomes a good guy after some intermittent point in the series. Kamen Rider's been doing that a lot the last few years, that people think it's going to be a continuing thing with him, even with how, frankly, irredeemable Isurugi has revealed himself to be. He has encouraged growth and development of Sento and the others, yes, but it's always due to a more insidious scheme where it's to get out of Sento's head something Katsuragi was developing that could make for a more powerful weapon that he in turn could use or manipulate. So the theory that I'm thinking of, now that we know that Misora is in part possessed by a Martian, is what if Isurugi is the exact same? What if Isurugi started all of this, the whole Skywall, Pandora box, power plot, because when he found the Pandora's box, he was also possessed by one of the Martian Warbringers that destroyed their world in this universe anyway. To begin with. Not anyways. Why was I going to say anyways? So yeah, that could actually lead to this not being the true Isurugi's fault, and also the Isurugi is going to be the ultimate villain thing, because, let's face it, that seems to be the direction they're heading this in, because it's pretty clear that he's manipulating Namba Heavy Industries as well, and Juzaburo Namba is just too focused on his own dreams of military power and conquest to even see it. Which also plays into two things that have been pointed out repeatedly on Twitter about this show, or at least from the people actually putting thought into this. How Kamen Rider has been doing a bunch of these things about the reality are bad, and, like, last year it was capitalism, for example. Yeah, last year's was definitely capitalism. Whereas this year it seems to be imperialism, going back to Japan's sordid history with, conquest schemes, and also that's also, you know, modern imperialism through proxy of companies manipulating or controlling political power and whatnot, which is definitely a big problem in America. But also, and more pertinently, the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, a Chinese novel that has a hell of a lot of parallels to the three-part country division, where they're divided by this wall, but they're not divided by... But their divide isn't actually being perpetrated by the wall, but different ideologies separated into fiefdoms or kingdoms in a more modern world where that is being allowed to fester simply due to the wall. So, in this... The imperialism theme in that book was mainly facilitated through loyalty to different factions of power, and that seems to be the way most of the villains in this series have been going. Worship of a power, and then loyalty or lack of loyalty to a force in the earth. I'm actually losing track of my full explanation of that. It's been a long day. So, yeah, this is building upon itself, pun, unintentional as it was, to a pretty much bigger idea of... I really need to reread Romance of the Three Kingdoms, is my basic... Yeah, that's the conclusion I keep running into with this, because I feel I would have a better idea of where this series is headed, beyond what's blatantly obvious in the foreshadowing. If they're echoing that novel, then yeah, that might be lead to an idea of the final endgame to this. Yeah, that's all I got for this time. Otherwise, yeah, still enjoying Build a lot. Lupinranger, I'm definitely warming up to better than last year. And I'm looking forward to what's coming next, because next week on Lupinranger vs. Patranger, supposedly the identities of the Phantom Thieves are going to be revealed to the Patranger. They're probably going to fake it out, but I'm curious if they'll actually follow through with that. I'll see y'all later.